guys there for that game against Pittsburgh? Very sad, right? So sad. I had some friends come up from North Carolina to watch the game, and I was like, I have to apologize to them that we lost. But the good thing is that other people lost too, so we're still in the hunt. Okay, cool. So a couple of things, like just housekeeping things. So a number of you asked about grades for the class. And so the way to think about this assignment that you have is, so there's an empirical exercise that was 15% of the grade. So what I'm going to do is, and then there was also 10% for a project like presentation. And so what I'm going to do is like this project that you're going to hand in, so the empirical part of it will count for the empirical exercise because you're going to be using a lot of those data skills. And then the write-up will be like the 10% that's the project component to it. It's like that's how the skills will be. Face palm.
Nah, that's more like a relief.
Okay, yeah, it's not, okay, so it's like a good thing.
Yeah.
It's like a good face palm. Okay, great, yeah. Okay, perfect. Any other questions on that? Are you guys making good progress in terms of solving the model and finding data and starting to put things together? No? You sent me an email, so I have to respond to you. Actually, so you sent me like 5 buckets already. At least that's what I got. I was like, man, this is... It's like, no, but we've been having problems with the emails. I apologize, because some of you may have like sent me emails and you haven't heard from me. It's like, you know, like what's happening with Professor Blair. Like, if you have not heard from me on an email that you sent me, like just resend it, because there was some really wacky things that have been going on with our servers over the past couple of weeks. So shoot me and copy Shannon on an email just with your progress report. Like, have you been able to solve the model? Do you understand what's going on? Do you have a data set? Like, are you making progress towards it? I do not want you to come the day before it's due and like, so like, what is like the second thing that we need to do on the assignment? Like, go to that. Okay. Yes.
Can you maybe give us some more like help with this data and like what we're supposed to do with the data?
Okay, have you set up your regressions yet? Like in terms of what you want to do? So this is what I'll suggest. Have you, if your group has solved the model, raise your hand. Okay, so that's good. So you know what the intuition is. Like these laws are going to affect the probability that you think you're going to go into market information effect, related to force participation, how many degrees you get, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so what I would encourage you to do is go back to when we looked at the effect of unionization on student spending and also on teacher wages. This is from the Hawksby paper, and what I did was I laid out a very detailed model for you in terms of what was the outcome of interest, what were the things that could have affected it, right? And then how we used the changes in laws to get at what's the effect of unionization on teacher wages, etc. And there were like a couple of different steps. So the first step we just looked at, well, there were some states that had there were some school districts that had unions and others that didn't. And we just ran the regression on that cross section, right? But then what could have happened was like there could be like a school specific fixed effect or something about a particular school that just made it more effective, and that was correlated with unions. So then we looked at the first difference, where we looked at, well, what was the difference? What was spending in 1980 versus spending in 1970? And when you take those two differences, we were able to get at that fixed effect, right? Now, in addition to that, we also said, well, there's the potential for there to be some kind of a growth trend over time. And so we had to take two sets of first differences and difference those two first differences to get rid of the growth trend, right? We had those 3 columns that we went through in detail. And so what I would encourage you to do to get some traction on this is to really say, okay, what are the outcomes that I want to measure? And I gave you some suggestions of some outcomes that you could measure. You can also choose to measure some other outcomes too. And then you want to think about what's going to influence these outcomes. Certainly it's going to be the existence of the law, and that's the key thing, but then there are going to be some other explanatory variables too. And so then you have to make a decision as to what are those additional explanatory variables going to be, right? And then do you need to run a first difference? Do you need to run a difference in difference, right? How many years of data would you need? And so all of that is within your power to do, just by looking at what we did in the lecture, looking at what was done in the Hawksby paper or Hawksby paper or the Stevenson and Wolfers paper too. Right? So once you have that set up, then you'll say, well, I know this is the kind of data that I'm looking at. So for example, Chris in his 5 a.m. email You're like Donald Trump, like sending tweets at 9 o'clock in the morning. No, something very productive. No, I'm just joking with you. Because you tell me like a very detailed question, like we're looking at this particular outcome, but we only have data on this versus that. What I'm thinking too is that, who has experience creating a wiki? Come on. Nobody has, like, yeah, just like a wiki. Because what I'm thinking too is we can create a wiki, a class wiki, where people put up the data sets that they're using, where they've gotten data from, and we can kind of crowdsource this too. Because at the end of the day, the whole goal of this exercise is for you to be able to like do the empirical component, which is to kind of like do this data stuff, but then also to understand the economics behind it. And so like I don't want the barrier to entry being like finding a data source. So nobody can do it with you. No, okay. All right. Well, what we'll do is we'll put. You know, what we can do, Shannon. We can open up an announcement on the Blackboard site, where people can say, "Oh, I found this data source that does X, Y, Z too." Something that you can do as well that's super helpful for finding data is you can look at the references of the paper, and you can like look at some of those other papers too to see what data sources they have used. Like we talked today in office hours, and like one of the things that I want to do with this exercise is I want to give you some guidance in terms of like what to do, which is why I like took a lot of time to lay out the detailed guide with footnotes, and links, and all of these great things. And then I also want to leave some scope for you to be like really creative too, and to be able to go there and to do like the research. So this is like it's semi-directed, and then some of it is going to be kind of like saying these are the choices that we're making. But if you do run into difficulties, like talk to your colleagues, talk to me, talk to Shannon. Don't be shy about that. What we'll do is we'll put together like a announcement on campus, and then people can post like what are some of the resources that they found, what are next variables that they use there, and all this budget. Other questions? Are you guys still enjoying this class? Okay. Was that a no? That's okay.
Yes.
You were like, either you were looking around or you were like, no. Okay, good. All right. Cool. So today we're going to talk about the economics of school accountability. I'm going to pass it this article. I didn't send this ahead of time because I know that you're working diligently on your projects. And so I don't want you to be like, who is this guy? He has us like working on this project, reading papers, doing all of these things together. But so the key idea is going to be the following. So what we've looked at so far is we've talked about the educational and production function. We've talked about ways to measure the linkage between inputs and outputs. And we care about these outputs because they're things like wages, they're things like citizenship, which we think are really important to society and important at the individual level as well. So this whole section on school accountability is going to really be thinking very deeply about this question of how can the government ensure that this linkage between inputs and outputs is tighter, right? How can we drive results by making sure that we're checking and monitoring, whether it's teachers or even administrators of schools too. So, I mean, like, we have accountability in this class, right? Like, when I come in here and I say, hey, I'm going to teach you, but then we're going to have homework, so we're going to have these assessments and so on and so forth, right? If we had kind of like the British system where and I can joke with the British system because I can't have a British system, where you basically come to class if you want to come to class, don't come to class if you don't want to come to class, but there's a final at the end of the semester that's worth 90% of your grade. And you just have to show up that one day out of the year. But that might be too late. Okay, so. So there are a couple ideas, and we're going to start off with these glossary terms that are up here. So like you can think about this lecture as really kind of like pulling out like some of the main like headlines from this paper. And a lot of the the second half of the course has been a lot more like reading papers and trying to understand like education policy, like how it's kind of shaped at a higher level as opposed to like detailed technical stuff. Okay. So economics, school password. So, in this paper, like, there are two ways of so here's the key idea. The key idea is to create incentives for educators to drive results. So you can think about this as like student performance. And there are two rationales for this, right? So the first rationale has to do with, oftentimes when we think about the public sector, like the refrain is that the public sector is really inefficient because people don't get paid for results, right? I remember when I was in high school, one of my teachers would say, like, if you learn or if you don't learn, it doesn't matter to me because I'm going to get paid, right? That sort of stuff would not fly in the private sector. So like one rationale is, well, we want to bring the public sector into alignment with the private sector. A second rationale for these types of accountability measures is what's called the principal agent problem. And so in this context, the agents are going to be the schools, and the principals are going to be the federal government. So the federal and state governments are going to be funding education. And the hope is going to be that teachers are going to be delivering this education to students in a great way. Now, to the extent that the federal government cannot monitor the students, the teachers, in a sense that can create the opportunity for teachers to shirk, right? And so what can happen is teachers may say, you know what, like I'm not going to teach anything, I'm just going to come in here and watch Netflix. And because there's not a state regulator coming in every day to like perfectly monitor what's happening in the classroom, you can get this kind of shirking too, right? And so the two rationales for school accountability private sector. By creating these to measure productivity. Incentivize good results. Second has to do with solving the monitoring problem of the principal and the agent. So the second one is so I'll write up the following. In a principal agent context. So you can think about the principal as being like the boss, and the agent as being the person that's carrying out instructions on behalf of the boss, right? In a principal agent context, right? federal government is the principal so this is kind of like if you go in a law firm and it's like this is like the main part, so principal in that sense as opposed to principal in the sense of like the person that is the school is the principal. And the school or the teachers are the agents. Whose responsibility is to educate students on behalf of the principal. To assure this, the principal is monitor. So for example, having accountability measures such as we're going to look and see what the average level of achievement is for the students in your class, that's one way of doing that. Okay. And this is more of the economic rationale. Okay, good. All right. Okay, let's talk about No Child Left Behind. How many of you guys have heard of that? Okay, awesome. Do you know which year that was enacted?
2001.
Say it again?
2001.
2000, you're close. Anybody else with another guess? 2000. Okay, so the No Child Left Behind was enacted by the federal government, and there are a couple key components of this accountability measure. So this is a federal school accountability measure that was enacted in 2002. There are a couple of key pillars to it. And here are the requirements. So the first requirement is that states would have to test students in reading and mathematics from grades 3 to grade 8. Am I writing too fast? I am. Okay. I'll slow down. Okay. So that's the first requirement, that states have to test students from grade 3 to grade 5, right? And also they have to choose one grade in high school to test them. And I'm going to write this on the board, but I'll just say it out before that. And there are also some requirements to monitor the progress of students in the aggregate, and also to monitor certain subgroups of students, so in particular minorities, to see like what their progress has been, and also students that are on free reduced lunch. Because the idea being that these accountability measures, or at least the hope is that they would be specifically helpful for students who might be in disadvantaged schools or from disadvantaged backgrounds. Because what might someone do if they're a child coming from a family community? What could they do if the public system sucks? Yeah, they can go private. Or even within the public school system, like what might more wealthy parents or kind of like more educated parents do?
Building a magnet.
Say it again?
Put them in a magnet school?
They can put them in magnet schools too. I'm like, think about this within the context of this framework, like what the rationales are for accountability. What is something that parents can actually do?
Hire a tutor.
Parents can hire a tutor. Some other things that they can do. That has to do with monitoring. So something that parents could do is they could check upon the teachers. Well, when I came home, Jimmy did not have any homework this week. Like, what's going on? Are you teaching him anything in class? Right? You can show up to the class and say, look, like, you're not doing your job. Okay. So the requirements are the following. So it required that states class students in grades 3 to 8 and 1 year of high school, reading and math. The second thing was that states assess schools on the basis of student achievement. And this is overall, and also by subgroups. And the subgroups, remember we mentioned, were minorities and low-income students. And these assessments were taking place through what were called adequate yearly progress. And so like each year the state had to produce a report on each of the schools within that state on these metrics, right? And the goal of this was that by 2014, like all schools within a state would reach 100% proficiency in terms of like having their students like being up to code. Chris is laughing, because obviously that has not happened. Okay, all right. And so this was the goal. So the goal was that by 2014, all schools have students at 100% proficiency. In reading and math. Now, let's talk about the two ways in which progress can be measured within the context of school accountability. So there are two. So like the first one, we can think of as a growth model. And this is similar to the value-added model that Shannon talked about. So what you want to do is you want to look at a specific student and see how much gains is the student making from year to year, right? And why might that be a good way to think about progress? What are some of the advantages of that way of thinking about measuring student of measuring student performance and measuring the impact of these like school accountability models on student performance? Why don't you want to measure like year-to-year progress for an individual student?
Certainly for student
Yeah, so allow for students for you to see like progress in students at different levels, right? Take for example, like you have a kid that is like basically like close to 0, and that kid goes from 0 to like 15, right? Versus somebody that's like at 85 and that kid goes from 85 to 100, right? Depending on what your policy objectives are, like you might be very interested in knowing like what those movements are. Right? Like if you care a lot about reaching kids that are very low ability, then you want to have some kind of very detailed measure of like what's happening at the individual student level. The alternative is really to make these assessments based on like the overall status of the school, which is how many students are graduating, how many students are at the level of proficiency. And No Child Left Behind actually focused on these more average measures of school proficiency. And so that's something to keep in mind. So let me just write down these 2 ways of measuring. So ways of measuring school performance. So under the status model, you can think about this as an average measure of student performance. Across all students. So for example, this could be like the average reading score. Yes.
In one school.
Yeah. In a given school. Thank you very much. That's important. For example, the average reading score. Right? So it would be like in this class, they said, well, what's the average grade in this class? Right? A second way could be this growth model, where we say, well, what was the baseline result for each person in this class, right? And how much did each person move up as a result of being in Professor Blair's class? And let's take the average of that. And so kind of like the average growth overall of the students. And so again, it's still an average, but what we're looking at is not kind of like what the absolute level is, but it's really how much on average did everybody improve by. Is everyone clear on that? And so this is like that value, this is like the value added level. So under the growth model, what you do is you measure the year-to-year improvement for each student in a school. And then compute average growth across all students in the school. Did everybody see this down here? Okay. So let's think about a couple examples. Imagine that we have a class of high flyers, and everybody's nailing like a 95, right? And they came in and they just were super smart to begin with. That's you guys, right? And then at the end of